Good day, fellow champions of inclusion. I am Aaron, and this is the Inclusive Dad podcast where we explore inclusion and make it practical. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join me in exploring ways we can create a more inclusive world together. You are important, you matter, and you can make a difference. Today, my guest is Angie Dixon. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Aaron.
Absolutely. Why don't you just start us off by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, I am autistic and I have ADHD, which is known as ADHD. I have written a book called The Leonardo Trait about autistic and profound creativity. And I've been writing this book for like 20 years. I wrote 3 editions before I realized I was autistic. Once I found out I was autistic a couple of years ago, completely changed my life. Just knowing that I'm not just weird or different and knowing, you know, who I am, where I come from, and what that looks like in my life and how I can help others understand what it looks like in their lives and how they can be more of themselves. It's just been fantastic.
So, what led you to find out that you had autism later in life?
Um, there were a couple things. My son was diagnosed as an adult, and I should have picked up on the fact that we are the same person, so probably I was autistic. But I broke my ankle a few years ago, and I was in the hospital, and there was this really, really sweet tech who was autistic, and one of her verbal things was that she would say, "I'm here to help." And she would say it 3 or 4 times, and she would come in my room several times a day. And I mentioned to another tech that I love Beth. Beth is really sweet, but that just kind of gets on my nerves. And she said, "Do you have autism?" And I said,
Hmm.
"Maybe." And then a couple of years ago, I had burned through all my health insurance and I had met my out of pocket so I could get diagnosed for free. And I said, I'm going to get diagnosed. I want to know. I want to know if this is what's going on because, it's not like you take meds and you get better,
Mm-hmm.
but I think I am. And I would like to know. And some people don't want to know for various reasons or they can't get diagnosed, but and that's fine. I mean, you're autistic whether you're diagnosed or not. Just like, if you have a broken arm and you don't get it x-rayed, it's still broken. So but I was really happy with my diagnosis. I felt like it explained a lot and it opened me up to, hey, this is my autism that's doing this. When I get really frustrated about something, that's that's an autistic emotional dysregulation, and I can deal with that because I know what it is. It's not just me suddenly losing it for no reason. It really helped a lot to know what's going on.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've interviewed a number of people, I don't know, 5 to 10 now, where yeah, they were diagnosed, such as yourself, later in life, and it's normally like somebody in their family was diagnosed, and they start looking into it like, I think I have all these things too, and then they're like, I get diagnosed. So it's kind of interesting how that happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is your definition of inclusion?
Inclusion really, I think, is making space before somebody has to ask for it. You know, open to not allowing, welcoming everyone and, being a place where someone with autism, for instance, can feel comfortable and can be themselves. And the being themselves part is so important because we're not broken neurotypical people. We're different. And that's great. I mean, that makes us who we are. And people love us. They think we're creative, they think we're interesting, they think we're funny. And by being open and welcoming to us, they're allowing us to be who we are.
Yeah, I love that. How inclusive is Arkansas?
Arkansas is not as inclusive as some other states. But I have found inclusive spaces in
Sure.
Arkansas, and I've found some spaces online that have been very welcoming to me.
That's good. What exactly is the Leonardo trait and how does someone know if they have it?
And the Leonardo trait is basically just really profound, wild creativity where, you're not going, how can I do this? But more of, what if I did this insanely wild thing instead? Um, a few weeks ago, I was thinking about doing a virtual summit, and for various reasons, that's not something I can really do. I'm disabled. It's hard for me to work that much. And I thought, what if I did an email based summit? An email based summit is not a thing. Nobody has ever done that.
Hmm.
That's not how you do it. And I thought, but what if I did? And I am. I've got like 20 people who want to speak. I've got people who want to attend it. It's great. And that's kind of the thing is that you come up with something that's not just outside the box, but like outside the entire room. And I think one way people can know if they have the Leonardo trait is if they're constantly not on the same page as other people in a good way. That someone else is trying to solve a problem and you're saying, what if that's not the problem? What if what if there isn't a problem? What if we did it this way instead? Not because there's a problem, but because this would be really cool.
And actually, before this morning when I was getting ready, I looked at your website and I saw your email-based summit, and that was very intriguing. So I was like, yeah, I don't think I've ever seen this before. So yeah, that's interesting. But
Yeah,
that's, I
I
mean,
hope it's
that's
gonna go
cool that,
really well.
yeah, I mean, it's cool you got a bunch of people that want to speak and people that want to be involved. So yeah, that'll be interesting to see how it goes. I mean, I do kind of like the idea because then it's kind of more, because a lot of times if it's like a 2 day thing, it's a lot of time to have tied up or you can't participate then. So you end up watching the replays anyway. So I mean, this way you can kind of get the email, do it when you can have time that day. So it's an interesting concept.
Yeah, I think it's a lot more accessible too. I mean, some people just can't really pay attention for an hour to something like that, even if they can find the time. So I'm
Yeah.
really excited about it.
Maybe you started something new, like a new trend.
I hope so. I hope so.
Yeah. Um, how did autistic masking shape your life and what finally pushed you to unmask?
Whole life really trying to be normal, and it didn't go well. I am not good at pretending to be something I'm not. And what finally got me was when my son was small, I realized that part of my role in life was to interpret the world for him because he was very literal and someone once asked him how the characters changed in Rugrats Back to the Future or whatever it was called, the one where they grew up. And he said, well, they pushed this button on this time machine. And I said, you asked them how they changed. You didn't ask them how they were different. And she said, that's true. And what she wanted to know was how they were different. But he was 5. And she asked him how they changed. So he told her how they changed. And I thought, my job is to be an interpreter between this child and the world until he can do it himself. And I realized that I wasn't going to do that by pretending to be somebody I wasn't. That I really needed to embrace who I was so that he could see me being myself and that he could grow up being himself.
Interesting. Have you lived in Arkansas your whole life?
To Arkansas in 91. I grew up in Missouri,
Okay,
about 4 hours north of here.
cool. What part of Missouri?
Southeast Missouri, the town you may have heard of is Cape Girardeau. No, it's about 2 hours south of St. Louis.
Gotcha. So my mom grew up in Quincy, Illinois, which I don't know if you've heard of that. And then
Yeah.
I had a great aunt who lived down near Alley Springs, down in southern Missouri. So I mean, I know I think Cape Girardeau, did they have a flood there or something once? Like a really bad flood or something?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I know roughly where you're talking about. And I've been to Arkansas once. It was a town south of Little Rock. I don't remember what it was called though. So I've been there when I was around 16, so it's been a while, but
Yeah.
I know roughly where you're at, so that's cool. What does autistic burnout actually look like in adults and why is it so often misunderstood?
Autistic burnout for us a lot of times looks like depression or laziness because we reach a point where we've just done so much that we can't do anything else. It really looks like depression and it sometimes feels like depression. Like, I just don't know how I'm going to get up, not how I'm going to go on with my life, but how I'm going to get back into my groove. I don't, I feel like I'm going to be lying here resting forever. It looks like depression sometimes, it feels like laziness sometimes, but it's really neither of those things. Autistic people, especially, we tend to work and play really super hard. We push ourselves really hard and then we just stop. I like to say I have two speeds, fast and stop. And if we push too hard before we stop, we're going to need some time. That may be a day, it may be weeks. If it's really severe, it may be years before we really get back to normal. I mean, we can function, but before we really get back to our normal selves, we're just going to need some time and some care with ourselves.
Yeah, that's awesome. Why do multi-passionate or multi-hyphenated creatives struggle with traditional productivity systems?
Okay, that's a really good one because we don't work in straight lines. We're more of a spiral that
Mm,
we'll work on something and then we'll let it sit for a little bit while we move on to something else that may not seem related, but we're always moving forward. It's hard for us to fit into hustle culture because we just are not built that way. And it's really important for us to be able to work the way we need to work. And that can be difficult in a traditional system, but it is possible. We can work with the people we work with to say, hey, I'm going to work on this and I'm going to get it to this point, and then I'm going to take a break and go over here and work sideways on this, and then I'm going to come back. I'm not abandoning this. I'm not moving on from it. We may need a little more time. We may need some creative, project management, but we're perfectly capable of working and functioning in the real world.
yeah, so sounds like we just need to make stuff more inclusive of everybody. How can we set up our company where, somebody with a different thinks a different way or works a different way can still contribute their gifts. I mean, that seems I kind of in the same I mean that I don't think I have autism. I've never been diagnosed or anything like that, but I have a hard time working in places where it's super rigid, especially because my brain will like find stuff that doesn't make sense. Then a lot of people don't like it if you ask questions like, "Why do we do it this way? This makes no sense. Let's do it this way." And I've tried that enough times. Now I just go to work and do my stuff. Try not to ask questions because it's just my brain works a little bit differently, and it's not it gets frustrating because then they don't want to change stuff, and you're like, "We should change this because it's very inefficient," but that's how we do it, and so, yeah, just have a workplace or any kind of a organization where everybody can contribute in their own way is what we need.
Definitely.
How was school for your son? Did he?
We we started homeschooling him in 6th grade. 5th grade did not go well. He was not really able to keep up with his assignments, and he's high functioning, but it's difficult. Um, he homeschooled through middle school and high school. He tried college, and it just didn't work out for him. He's thinking about going back now that he's older, and he'd like to be a nurse. So that is more of a straight line career, and I think it's going to be difficult for him. But he's really he feels like that's what he'd like to do, and we're totally supportive of that, and hope that he can find a place that he can fit. And obviously, I had the tech in the hospital, and she was in nursing school, and she was doing great. And I want to reiterate, she was really sweet. Did not have a problem with her at all. She was very sweet. Um, and so he had a difficult time in school because he has ADHD also, as well as autism, and paying attention and moving in a straight line. Public school is just not built for us.
Yeah, so my story is I have two children. My daughter, Cecilia, she's 23 now, but she has epilepsy and cerebral palsy. So was in special education the whole time, and I didn't know anything about it, so we went along with it. So it's just my son was on the gifted side, so we had like a child on each side of the curve in school, and I mean, if you have a child, in my opinion, I didn't have one in the middle, but like it seems like that's built better for probably that student, and if you're on the fringes, it's much more difficult, and yeah, it's kind of a battle. We had a battle the whole time for my daughter to be included as much as possible because based on her diagnoses and how she presents, should have been a kid like in a segregated classroom in their opinion. So just trying to fight that stigma and get her, what we felt she needed. So I understand the schooling stuff can be difficult.
Yeah, and it really is for kids in the middle. Our
Yeah,
daughter is pretty neurotypical, and she just flew through school. She had
yeah.
lots of friends. She did really well. She graduated. She went to college. Everything was great for her. And, she's younger, and we didn't know what we were looking at with our son, partly because at the time they didn't diagnose ADHD and autism together. So they said he had ADHD, so he couldn't have autism. And we didn't know what we were looking at. And we really struggled. And it's a
Mhm.
shame that schools are not more inclusive because you really don't have a lot of choices. You've got public school, private school, which a lot of times is not any better, or homeschooling, which not everyone can do.
Yeah. Yes. Growing up, do you ever remember, like, what was your experience with disability or anything like that growing up? Do you ever remember hearing about it or knowing anybody?
Not really. I grew up in a really small town. And I mean, we had some kids who were in special ed, but I think there was a boy in my first school who was deaf, and he had hearing aids, and he could hear and communicate pretty well. And that was my experience with disability growing up. And as I got older, I met more people and learned more. And then, you know, my son with his autism and me with my autism. And then a few years ago, I became physically disabled with mobility challenges. And it really opens your eyes when you become disabled and you start seeing everything in the world that's wrong. And, when I was in college, I don't know what class this was, but I walked into the student union and a friend of a friend was in a wheelchair. And I asked her what was going on, and she said, "Oh, it's for a class. We're spending a day being disabled so
Hmm.
that we can learn how to create accommodations." And I think everyone should have to spend at least a day, preferably a month, you know, in a different body to learn what that's like.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about because, I mean, growing up, I don't ever remember hearing the word disability, seeing anybody in a wheelchair. I went to a Christian school, private school through eighth grade and then a public high school, and I don't remember even hearing the word special ed. Maybe I did, I just didn't have the connection to like remember it. But, I go anywhere I go, we're driving down the road, I look at a building, I'm like, that's not accessible. My daughter uses a wheelchair, so yeah, I see all the stuff where it's like she can't go in there. We can't if we wanted to go to that restaurant, we can't because there's no, it's just all the time. And then my partner, we've been together like 4 years now, and she was never around anybody like in a wheelchair to the extent she is now with my daughter. So she's like, I always there's a law, so I thought everything was good, and now I realize being around you guys that there's a lot of stuff that isn't. So yeah, once you see it, it's hard to unsee it.
Oh yeah, and we wanted some relatives were coming in from town recently and wanted to go out to dinner, and I said, "We'll have to find some place that's
Yep,
accessible." And they were like,
yep,
"Oh yeah, well, do you know any place?" We were like, "Yeah, we got this covered." But so
yep,
many places are, even if they look accessible, the tables are too close together,
yep.
or the it's too small and crowded. It's there's just so much that goes into accessibility that people don't even realize.
Another one, I don't. My daughter loves music, so she likes going to concerts, and I've now learned to like call ahead because if you go on to like Ticketmaster and hey, there's the accessible seat, like some places they sell that seat plus the companion as a package. Some it's separate. So if it's me and my partner and my daughter, that's three people. So I usually call them. So my daughter, she wanted to see the singer performer Brandon Lake up in St. Paul, Minnesota, north of us a couple hours. So I call the venue and they're like, yeah, this is what it is. I'm like, well, there's three of us, so how do I do that? He's like, well, buy the ticket, the accessible ticket comes with a companion, then buy another ticket anywhere in the stadium, and then when you get there, just you guys can sit together. I'm like, that's legal? Well, it'll be up to the usher that night. I'm like, I'm not spending hundreds of dollars on tickets to have somebody that night say that I can't sit by. You know what I mean? So it's like, how do
Yeah,
you how do you just something as simple as if me and my partner go, we just go grab two seats. But if my daughter with a wheelchair comes, now it's this whole production. Plus, you need to check to see if she has epilepsy, so she has rescue meds and like bags on her wheelchair. Well, okay, you can only have clear bags, it says in the policy. So can I bring in this stuff? Can I not? I want to know before I get to the gate. So it's this whole production of all these checking to make sure, just for her to listen to somebody she wants to hear sing. So it's a lot more work.
yeah. Concerts are an ordeal, but I will say that every concert, I love concerts too. That every concert I've been to, I've gotten really good seats because the accessible seats are up
Yep.
high
Yep.
and there's
See
nobody
it.
sitting in front of you.
Yep. That is true. That is true. What kind of music do you like?
I like everything. I just got my Spotify Wrapped and it said that I listen to like 100 and some odd genres. I
Okay.
was like, I don't think
Wow.
there are that many genres.
What's one of your favorite concerts you've been to?
My favorite that I've been to recently, I went to see Cyndi Lauper about a year
Oh,
ago. We drove down to Dallas to see her,
okay.
and it was fabulous. And we had really great seats, and she was just, I mean, she's in her 70s, and she was just dancing and spinning
Mm-hmm.
and telling stories, and we're going to see Heart here in Arkansas in February, which is going to be really good.
There you go. Yeah, I've seen Elton John 4 times. I've seen the Eagles like 4 or 5 times. Seen Garth Brooks. So I've been to a lot of concerts. I'm thinking about, are you gonna go? I saw AC/DC is gonna be in St. Louis. I'm thinking about going down there to see AC/DC.
That'd be a
But
good one.
yeah, because I've never seen anybody like that. I mean, I had CDs of theirs growing up, so it'd be kind of nice, fun to go listen to them. But I haven't bought the tickets yet. We'll see. Yeah. What surprised you most about your late autism diagnosis, and what changed afterwards?
What surprised me the most was that I really didn't even have an inkling until a couple of years before I did get diagnosed. And what had changed the most was I realized that there are other autistic people. If I'm autistic, that means there are other people like me. And I had never in my life really had people. Part of the reason I wrote the first Leonardo trait was I was trying to find my people. And I did find creative people who called themselves Leonardo. But once I realized that I'm autistic, there are millions of people like me. I'm in a couple of communities with people like me, and I'll say something, and there'll be several people who come on and say same, and it's just amazing to have grown up being weird and different, and then to suddenly find that I am different, but there are a whole lot of people who are different in the same way I am.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. When my daughter was younger, we went to a lot of stuff with the Epilepsy Foundation of Minnesota, and that was just other families that had children with epilepsy also. And yeah, it's hard to describe, but it was nice to have a place where we could just walk into the room and didn't have to like tell our story, over and over and over. It's just like we all were similar stories. It was just this place we could be together and, enjoy time together. So that makes a lot of sense where, yeah, it's once you realize that there are other people out there in a similar situation going through similar thing, that's very comforting for sure. With that. Why do so many creatives feel too much, and how do we break out of that lie?
We are a lot. We're intense. We have a lot of ideas. We talk a lot about a lot of things. We know a lot of things because we're just very curious. And I once told my son I could talk about anything for 2 minutes, and he was about 10. And he said, "Talk about M&Ms for 2 minutes." So I talked about M&Ms for 2 minutes. He was like, "Oh, you really can't do that." And a lot of people, especially in our society, are very buttoned down. They don't talk for hours about their special interests. They may have a special interest, but they don't go on and on about it. They don't have the ideas that we have, and we can be a little much. But the way that we get through feeling like we're too much is to realize that our people, the people who love us, they love us because of who we are. They love us because we're like this, not in spite of us. And the people who don't get us and who don't understand us, those are not our people. And we may have to be around them for work or for some other reason, but we don't have to try to make them our people. They don't have to make us be different. We don't have to be someone we're not because of them. We can be with our people and be who we are. And if we haven't yet found enough of our people, that just means they're out there waiting for us and we will find them.
Yeah, that's great advice. I love that for sure. What's the one piece of advice you'd give to a burned out or overwhelmed creative who thinks they've tried everything?
I would say rest. Just figure out what absolutely has to be done right now and figure out a way to do that. But then shut everything down and just rest and listen to some music or watch a movie or, you know, and watch a stupid movie. Don't watch like, Saving Private Ryan. Watch Weekend at Bernie's.
There you go.
And, just really give your brain time in your body, time to recover, and do as much of that as you can and as you need to.
That's great. Yeah, you say that we've been watching some older movies. We watched, I don't know if you've ever seen it, Idiocracy. We saw that on Netflix last night. It is one of the stupidest, but it was like stupid funny movies. Just like that's so crazy stuff. You're like laughing because it's just, I can't believe they put that in the movies. Then we started watching Liar Liar last night with Jim Carrey. It's like I hadn't watched that forever, and it's like, oh my gosh, I was laughing so hard. Yeah.
Yeah, and I watched, somebody recommended Hot Tub Time Machine the other day,
Okay.
and that's a stupid movie. It is really funny. They get in this time machine and it takes them back to the 80s, and then they're like, we can't change anything, so they change everything, and then they go back to the future and they're all rich and famous.
Well, that's funny. We'll have to watch. I'll have to put that on the list to watch next. There we go. What is one tip you can share to help the listeners be more inclusive today? So there's something anybody can start doing today to be more inclusive.
Just simply to ask, what do you need to feel more comfortable? Because autistic people, like anybody else, we're individuals. Someone may need to take notes in a meeting on their phone. Someone else may need to be able to have a fidget in the meeting to keep them focused. You just have to ask what would make you more comfortable in this situation.
That's a great tip. Where's the best place for everybody to connect with you?
At my website, profoundcreativity.com, and I have a freebie there on how to make the most of working in a spiral.
Ready for the last question?
Yes.
Do you like Spam lunch meat? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes. That was pretty
What's
fast.
really good, Spam and rice and pineapple and brown sugar sauteed in a skillet. You
That
could
does sound
make it
good.
with something else. You could make it with chicken or ham,
Yeah.
but we make it with Spam, and it's really good.
Yeah, I asked that question because I live near Austin, Minnesota, where they make Spam and where the Spam Museum is located. So if you ever want to visit the Spam Museum, you got to come to southern Minnesota.
All right. That sounds
Yeah.
like fun.
It is. I mean, it is. We've been there a couple of times. It is pretty fun, and it's the town. Austin has probably 25 to 30,000 people, and like 100,000 people visit that every year. So it brings a lot of people to town to for stuff. So yeah, it's kind of fun. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. To those listening, thank you for allowing me to be part of your journey. It is truly an honor. Please join the podcast newsletter by clicking on the link in the episode description to keep up with the latest episodes. Together, we can make the world more inclusive. Until next time, stay empowered and be a champion for inclusion.